Yes, hello. Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. Sounds good. So first of all, we'd like to welcome everyone to this session. So this is the first session that we are starting for prospective as well as current English teachers, and it's our pleasure today to welcome our specialists who will introduce later on. But let me just say real quick, I'm Dennis Yang, the Regional English Language Officer here at the U.S. Embassy in Panama. And we, in collaboration with Panama TESOL, which is based here in Panama, we are very happy to bring to you these series of workshops designed for English teachers to help people to better adapt to this new learning environment, to provide people additional skills and knowledge regarding English teaching in this new online environment. So without further ado, let me now welcome Elizabeth Mesa, who is our Public Affairs Officer at the U.S. Embassy in Panama. Thank you. Elizabeth?
There we go. Excellent. Hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Meza, and I am so excited about this training. Dennis and Juan Carlos and I have been talking about this for quite some time. I think everyone in Panama, along with everyone around the world, was sort of taken aback, like the world kind of turned upside down in March when COVID hit. And we have all tried to figure out how we are going to respond and what is this new normal. And I think those of you as educators have this particularly challenging task of continuing in your quality education that you want to provide for the students that you're responsible for in this new virtual realm. I'm a mother. I have 3 children that are in school. And so I know from kind of the home perspective how challenging it has been for my children to be students. And I have friends who are teachers, and I can only imagine the challenges that you have faced as you are trying to shift and to learn how to teach everything that you already know, but teach it in these new dynamic ways. So I am grateful that we are able to offer this small opportunity. I hope that you will find some helpful information, some useful techniques and ideas to help you all as you embark on this sort of, this new way of teaching and also of learning. We are all lifelong learners, right? So it is our pleasure at the embassy to be able to help offer this small kind of grain of sand in the COVID response here in Panama. And I look forward to hearing about all the work that you all are doing and the results that come out of this. And you are not here to listen to me, so I'm going to re-mute myself and listen to you all. And I just want to say one more time, welcome. Thank you for participating, and I hope that this is fruitful and beneficial for all of you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for your welcome remarks. And now let me turn it over to Fernando from Panama TESOL, who also would like to give some remarks. Fernando.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thanks, Dennis, and thanks, Elizabeth, and thanks to the great team from the RELO's office at the Department of State for this opportunity and for all the experience, because it's been weeks and different details, and especially giving birth to different ideas and sharing electronically, because we can't physically yet, but it's been fun. It's been great. And well, thank you, Annalise, for all the effort and for all your time and dedication. I am sure that the whole TESOL family will enjoy to the fullest all the experience. So stay tuned, stay there for the rest of the days that this is going to take. And just stay tuned, because we're going to continue doing things together. I think we're now giving a chance to Monica. But on my part, on behalf of Panama TESOL, was just great welcome, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks so much. Here comes Monica.
Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. I just want to say thank you all for being here in Zoom and also in YouTube. We have around 200 people in the YouTube channel. So you know that if you want to go back to this presentation, you can always go back to the embassy's official YouTube channel and review it. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. We are going to start. We'll kindly ask you to please keep your microphones muted. If you want to turn on your cameras, that's totally optional. Until the end, we're going to ask for a picture, so we will ask you to turn on your cameras. But until then, please keep your microphones off. And you can use the chat panel to ask any questions here in Zoom, and also the chat panel in YouTube for any of the questions that you may have. I am going to pass it on now to Dennis so he can introduce our fantastic speaker for today.
Okay, thank you so much, Monica. And now, everyone, without further ado, we'll get started. Let me introduce Annalise. Annalise, who's here on the call. So Annalise is our English language specialist who will be leading these workshops for everybody starting from today. And remember, Wednesday and Friday, as well as next week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday as well. So let's get started. Annalise, are you there?
Hello, I'm here.
Yes, Annalise, very good. So so feel free to get started. You can briefly introduce yourself, and then we can carry on with the slides. Thank you so much.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone. It is a real honor and pleasure to be here with you. I think this is an exciting time when we're doing some really new things and things that I think build our toolbox and our skill sets as teachers. So it's a privilege for me to be here with you, and I look forward to 6 different workshops together. So let me share my screen and get started. I have a little more information about myself once I start here. So I have the Google Slides, and normally when I am teaching, I always put my documents online. So these will also be available for you with all of the links. But this is our first presentation, and it's all about the principles of online teaching and learning. So I want to just start here by looking at what we're going to do today. So I'm going to introduce myself to you, and we're going to look at the 2-week workshop overview, and then we will get to today's focus, the key online teaching principles. And I think we have some interesting things to go over. So first, I'll introduce myself. 30 years ago this summer, I was in training in a little town in Togo for my Peace Corps position in Benin, West Africa. So that's where I started. I then was an English language fellow there. So I did 5 years overseas, and I had a most amazing time. When I came back, I started a couple of different things. I started an intensive English program at a university, and then I transitioned to the college I have been at since 2000. So at this college, I have taught many, many things. Of course, always the English and the focus on the skills that university students need, the critical thinking skills. But I've also taught first-year experience courses. I've used service learning, and I've really championed the idea of online teaching and theme-based teaching. So those have been things that I have done. At the bottom, you can see I went to UC Berkeley for my undergrad and San Francisco State for my grad. So each day as we begin, I'll share a few more little tidbits about myself. I feel like it's important for you to have a sense of who I am, even though in this peculiar new online world, I can't see who you are, but I still think it's important as a teacher for me to model what I would do in any online class, and that is to try to build some connection and some, in some ways, some knowledge of who each other is as a teacher, as a student, and as a resource. So that's my little intro for myself. I would normally stop here and ask you all to wave at me if you can hear me well. Is everyone able to hear me? Everyone able to see everything? I saw Becca, thank you. Okay, good. So our overview here, we have 2 weeks of workshops, and you probably are familiar with the workshop content for each different workshop. I won't go over them at length, but I will say that today is really a foundational day where we want to look at some key ideas about teaching and learning online. I imagine that some of you have done this for a while and some of you are new. So we'll have a spectrum of knowledge that you bring to the workshop. Hopefully at the end, you'll have a sense of some of the foundational principles that you need to keep in mind as we move forward with the subsequent workshops. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays on Edmodo, we have discussion days. So you can send questions and answers. I can answer in your comments, and those will be on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So today we are going over this first topic, and that is the online teaching and the principles that really undergird this. And each day we have a different focus. So today we're looking at something you're probably very familiar with, this idea that we have some new realities in our teaching world with COVID-19. And then we're going to look at some of the challenges as we move to online, foreseen and unforeseen, and then some basic principles. So the first thing I want to talk about is that shared knowledge that we all have. We're all aware of COVID-19 and the consequences of it. Some of us have been touched personally by it. And I have my stepmother in ICU right now, not doing well. We don't know what will happen. So I feel like all of us need to acknowledge that this is a hard time personally for many, many people. ICU is intensive care unit. She's really struggling. I imagine that many of you have people you know who've also had COVID or have struggled, and maybe some of you have lost people. So as a person, as a human, we acknowledge this hard time, and then we come together as teachers. And from a teaching point of view, it has some real exciting opportunities to do online, and there are also some very difficult parts, but the motivation here that pushes us is the COVID. So I have a clip of a little boy talking about his experience and his opinion, his advice here. Let me know. Okay, so that was my little moment to say we have to stand strong as humans and also as educators in the light of COVID. So now we are in this world where we are moving to online. And with COVID, I have a little bit of data here. The global number of children who are out of school, according to Lee and Lowland, are 1.2 billion. So as Elizabeth talked about as our PAO from the embassy, her children are learning from home. I have a 9-year-old daughter. She is also learning from home. My other children are grown. Unfortunately, they don't have to do the learning from home experience, but there are a lot of children and a lot of teachers who are in this situation. So ultimately over here, I just want to point out that we are at the moment in time where education has changed and is changing dramatically. And the e-learning, this virtual world, is going to have an impact, not just on our next months and our next classes, but it will go beyond. So I wanted to just take a moment and acknowledge this. So here is a quote from a 5th grade teacher, a bilingual teacher. And she says, "I hope that others recognize that we have to be ready for whatever can come at us." The idea is you are here in this workshop because you are ready and you are willing to learn and adapt. So I take a moment also and ask, how do you feel? Are you apprehensive? Are you excited? Are you enthusiastic? Are you unsure? Or are you overwhelmed? And I have a little, it's not a survey, it's a poll. That's the word I was looking for, a poll in Edmodo that you can answer about how you feel. So wanted to start with a little glance at the challenges of online teaching and learning. And when I put a lot of text here on a page, I also often bold the key points so that you can see them easily. The other thing is, again, if I go too quickly or there's just too much there for you to read, all of this will be posted so you can go back to it. But ultimately here, one of the big challenges, and this is a challenge for students and for teachers sometimes, is reliable internet access. And that challenge is all around the world. In my town, we have, the schools have given all of our students laptops, but not all of the students with laptops have that reliable access. So that has been a struggle, the whole technology aspect of teaching and learning online. Then you have this issue, as I just mentioned, this gap between the privileged and the disadvantaged background students. And that gap can really make a difference. I feel like my own daughter, who is 9, has parents who are teachers. Both my husband and I are professors. But even with that sort of ideal situation, her struggle online is real. So we have struggles for students who have all the technology they need, but also struggles for students who really can't always access the technology. So to underline that, I had this little picture. I'm sure you've come across this at some point in your education, this illustration where the teacher is asking the classroom of different animals to climb the tree. So you must take the same exam, and the exam is to climb the tree. And the idea here is an issue of inequity. So for some of them, climbing the tree is natural and easy. And obviously, excuse me, for some of them, climbing the tree is impossible. And how does this relate to teaching and learning online? It connects back to technology and access. And I think that's a very important thing to consider as you plan and move into that online realm. In my own personal experience, my 9-year-old with 2 parents who are teachers doesn't like Zoom. and she's very wiggly. And so her experiences online are not always easy, and she often struggles. So therein lies the dilemma. This is not an option for her. How do we, as parents, and how do her teachers make this a viable learning experience? So we'll come back to that. So here I have a young guy talking about some of the challenges from his perspective.
Okay, so really doesn't like it. Okay, it looks like Drew is one who absolutely doesn't like it. I think Sawyer doesn't like it either, but tell us, Drew, why don't you like it?
I don't like it because I think it's easier for your teacher to be in the same room as you. And like if you have like a question, your teacher could help you.
Okay, so his main point was he's missing that key interaction, the teacher in the same room. The one good thing though in all of this is that there are remedies. If the teacher's not in the room, there are ways to still help students connect. We will talk about these. Those will be a future workshop, not necessarily today. So here is another issue about relating to the challenges. And the little guy who was just talking to us, he touched on this idea of sort of motivation and engagement. His teacher isn't there, his motivation is low, his engagement is low. How do we as teachers address that? In addition, this non-mobility of courses, sometimes students are trying to get to a page and they can't find the page if their device has some blocks on it. From my daughter's perspective, the computers from her school, they block all sorts of sites. And so that could be also a challenge, particularly if the teacher wants to use an innovative site online. And then there is this idea that online, sometimes the courses are more complex. The structure is a little bit more visual, and that can be a challenge also. If students and teachers are not tech savvy, we have issues, but for teachers, you need to be able to understand some basics of a learning management system, and that can be a problem. Here, the absence of efficient course analytics. This is talking about ways to assess and measure student learning. We will talk about that in our last workshop, the very last one in August, on August 7th. Then sometimes there is this issue with some outdated course content. Sometimes you have to use a learning management system that really isn't up to date, and sometimes the content needs to be refreshed. So ultimately, teachers who are working in this online environment, they can feel like they are very isolated. So you're kind of alone in this online world. However, there are ways to address that. And I think it's important here to look at this second one, that you might actually be sitting by yourself at a computer miles apart from the students. That's an issue, but how do you address it? How do you turn the problem into something that you can make positive? So I'd like to pause here if we were all together and ask you particularly what challenges you anticipate in your different contexts. I understand that many of you are elementary, middle, high school, even secondary and higher institutions of higher learning, instructors and professors. So this is a time when I'm curious to know what your challenges are and what your thoughts are. And if I'm not able to read the chat now, because I find it a little difficult to read the chat and also share information, I would really be interested in reading the chat later or seeing your ideas on Edmodo. And once you type those in and post those, I can respond to those. But I am particularly interested. Sometimes I feel like if I have feedback, I'm able to add some things into future workshops that might address a specific challenge. So please share your thoughts in Edmodo or in chat. This is the quote I wanted to share. This is a different perspective. And I feel like I am a more positive person. I think that's why I teach. And I think this quote is a very important one to kind of give us an attitude of openness. So basically, the idea is that we have some challenges. Maybe some teachers have little or no training. There are technical issues. And we worry that the user, the student, will have a poor experience. But here in this dark black font, others believe that a new hybrid model of education will emerge, and that what we're doing now and what we're learning now will lead to some significant benefits. So I like to look at this situation more as a glass half full. I am a more optimistic person.
Oh, actually, Annalise, sorry to interrupt real quick. This is Dennis. We have a couple questions that, if you don't, that I'd like to sort of pose to you, so you can help to address real quick. There's some questions about large classes in terms of like challenges regarding large classes in this sort of new environment, as well as the ways that people are able to access these online trainings, because some people can only use WhatsApp or other applications via their phone, or so it's difficult for some people. So we're hoping you can kind of briefly address that.
I would be happy to. So a lot of times when I am talking with teachers like myself, I use my own experience, and I appreciate the question. So when I have large groups or large classes, I face the same challenges that all teachers face. And there are some different techniques you have to use. But when you are in the online teaching and learning mode, you have to really look at, is the class with a learning management system and you have a syllabus prepared that you're following course outcomes? Or is the class more of a class that's a Zoom synchronous class like we have today, and you're able to talk to people and see faces? For me, the asynchronous has some clear advantages, because I am really doing a lot of one-on-one interaction with students. I listen to their video posts or their audio posts, so that's just me and them. I read their individual discussion posts, and I can do that in my own time. So there's a benefit with a large class if it's asynchronous, so you have time. With a synchronous class as you have today, it's not as easy to really address individual students. So one thing I like to do when I have large groups is I like to use the Zoom chat room feature. And I have not planned any Zoom chat room feature activities with you all, because you are on Zoom and you're also on the YouTube stream. So it's not possible. But if you had a Zoom course that you are teaching and you want students to do some practice with a teaching point, the Zoom rooms that you randomly create or specifically select, you assign the number of people you want, and then the students are placed into the Zoom rooms. Those Zoom rooms can be a lifesaver. And that is one of my biggest teaching tips for large classes in this synchronous environment. In terms of the tools and the strategies, we're going to talk more about those on Wednesday and Friday this week, but I certainly appreciate your sending in the questions you have. And my idea here of Zoom rooms is just one of the things that you can do. So thank you for that question. Here we have this glass half empty or this glass half full idea. And the takeaway from this is just this idea that online education perhaps will eventually become an integral component of school education. And I want to emphasize that because I have taught online for more than 12 years. I believe my fully online classes started in 2008. So I always do both. I have online and I have face-to-face, and I love them both for different reasons. But one thing I have found that I've wanted to have happen is I would like to mix them. and that's hybrid. Our college doesn't really have hybrid, but I predict that this experience that we're all having with online, as we learn to use the features and to take away the very beneficial tools, I predict that it will be integrated in the future in everything that we do with our students, because there are some parts that are really in some ways better than face-to-face. And I want to acknowledge here another thing that Dennis said about students who have limited access. I have students who do entire college courses on their iPhone, and I teach often composition. And the thing that amazes me is that they write essays with their iPhone, and they do beautiful work. So our students, my students, your students, I believe, have resilience, they have grit, and if their means to access my course is just their iPhone, they find a way to use it effectively to do what they need to do. So I have a lot of hope that what we are doing online and in this world of online learning will have a very positive impact. So that's my glass half full approach here. So I have a teacher who is going to also echo that.
Your homes, when you're having your in-home learning, can you all interact with your teachers?
Yes.
Let's ask Ms. Dunlap what she thinks about it. I know this is a whole new way for you. How's it going?
Yes, absolutely. You said it perfectly. It's definitely a whole new way. And, you know, being honest in the beginning is very challenging. Learning technology is hard for me, but learning it so quickly is even harder. But actually, I feel like, you know, the more that we get into the class, you know, the easier things are becoming. And really, Drew, just as you were saying, you know, it's hard to not be in the same room as your teacher. Well, it's really hard for me not be in the same room as my students. I'm used to walking around the room all day, doing small groups, different movement activities, and you know, a lot of those things are limited with our distance learning. But you know, over time, we're learning, and just as boys and girls, you just said, you can still talk with your teachers.
Okay, so there is one point of view looking at something positive, and here is the little picture of the Edmodo poll that I have posted. And I'm interested to see, we have a few people who already have answered if they have an optimistic or pessimistic perspective on this. So this is something you can do later at home. Let me move forward here. Oops. There we are. So another positive aspect of this move is that research is showing that online learning has these benefits of increased retention, and in some cases, for some people, it actually takes less time to learn things. So there's a lot of research out there that's showing that there are many positive aspects of now moving online. So here's a little overview of some of these benefits of moving online, just to make us to put us in the mindset to have an open mind and a positive attitude about this. So one benefit here is this idea of flexibility. So if your class is asynchronous and you can go anytime in and listen to a clip, a lecture, and read, there's a lot of flexibility. If your class is asynchronous, you have accessibility. So all of the things the teacher is wanting you to learn is there 24/7. You can access it. The other benefit here is that students are starting to realize that they can tap into, they can find information, they can have global knowledge, that they're shared information from teachers from all over the world, from resources from many, many places. Another thing is that the students online can control their study time, so they can take a break and come back, particularly with the asynchronous. The chance for interaction is there. And the thing about online courses when you're interacting is that you have to be creative, but it is there. When I teach, I have my students do each semester a group essay. And the interaction that comes from their needing to work together, to call, to text, to email, to have Skype and FaceTime. They really find that many times they find they're able to connect and appreciate that group learning process. It can be cost effective because people don't always have to take a bus or ride in a car to go somewhere. And this idea of better opportunity. So if students are able to pick different online learning environments, perhaps they do have better educational options. And online learning inherently is student-centered because it starts with the student. What does the student need to know? How can I impart that information? So I come to another question. We talked about some of the benefits. Are there any that stand out for you as key, that really strike you as different from the face-to-face learning environment, that maybe motivate you to think, I think it's worth investing time in to learn about this, because I think that the benefit from this particular aspect could really be quite amazing? Anyone want to share, or maybe I'll just go on? I could look at the chat. I can't really look at the chat here.
Oh, I'm here. Don't worry.
Okay.
Hi, this is Dennis again. So I'll mention some of the some of the comments, maybe some of the questions. We're still waiting for some feedback on this particular question. So everyone, if you have any thoughts, please comment either in YouTube or in our Zoom chat about the benefits that you feel stand out for online education. Some folks on YouTube as well as Zoom mentioned the importance of motivation. Sometimes some kids are easily motivated online and others aren't because of the online format. I was hoping you can sort of talk a bit about that and your view about that in terms of motivation.
That's a good point. And we do have almost an entire workshop that's going to be talking about ways to motivate and engage. But I can tell you from, again, my own experience, I find that the motivation and the ways that teachers can engage their students, it's kind of sliced up. It varies by age group. So for my 9-year-old, she just had an online course last week, a summer activity, and she was very engaged when there was music and singing and dancing. They had little egg shakers and little chopsticks, and they even said, get a pot and a pan and make a drum. So when it was movement oriented, she was motivated. So that's one example of that age specific activity. I'm not so sure that my university students, my college students would feel the same. I think that it's important to look at who your students are, who is your target audience, and what is your target learning outcome? How can you motivate them for that outcome, those specific students? So it's a good question. It does not have an easy or short answer.
There's one more question the one benefit that some people are mentioning on Zoom is that some students who are a little bit shy in the past, like some people actually benefit a lot from the online environment. They can chat and they can sort of be themselves and feel more comfortable. What are your thoughts on that, Annalise?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And I feel like that is an advantage for older students. I think for younger students, it could actually be a way for them to hide and not really develop. And that's why sometimes younger students really benefit from being pushed to interact. I think for some older students, though, they learn better independently. They learn better on their own. And the online, particularly the asynchronous online learning environment, can be ideal for them. So again, you're matching the different ways of motivating and the different ways of engaging to the student and the content. And I personally think that the students I have had who choose to take an online asynchronous class, they have the choice. They will tell me in their discussion posts that if they didn't have that option of the online class, they wouldn't have come to class. They wouldn't have come to college, that was the only way they were able to learn. And many times it's because of their work or their family responsibilities, but it also encompasses this idea of their comfort level and really preferring to learn in a less interactive way. So that's a good point, an important thing to note. Thank you. So now we're going to look at some models for online learning. And these models mirror learning models. So we have behaviorist, constructivist, all of the different cognitive models, but this is sort of looking at the models through the lens of the online world. So we're going to look at these. I think this is a very important sort of foundational piece as we move forward. And again, I acknowledge that for some of you, this will be something you already know. For others, it may be a lot of information. So again, you have the opportunity to go back and review if you need to. So one model is the community of inquiry model. And this model really shows the overlap between the social presence in the class of the teacher and the students and the teaching presence, and then the cognitive, the content. And for this model, the design here is this learning experience overlap that uses the interaction and the students blogging, talking, interacting, video posts as their main way for really acquiring new information. Another model here, the Anderson online learning model, you can see how there is this acknowledgement that the teacher and the student are online, it's synchronous or asynchronous. The content is here in the middle, and it looks at how you can have student to student interaction, content, and then the role of the teacher. One thing to note here is that the learner is interacting in multiple formats. So you could have some independent study, you could have some collaborative learning, you could have this community of inquiry where a teacher poses a question and the students respond, and then very structured content, lectures online, resources to study online, readings online. So this is another model. And I show you these models really as background for a model that integrates all of them. And I think that's important to look at, that these are different ways of imagining how online learning occurs, but the one I'm going to end with is sort of my preferred approach. So this one is almost there. This is blending with pedagogical purposes. And this is almost where I think we as teachers in the online world need to be. So here we're looking at content. So your learning management system, what games, what media you're using, what clips you have. Then the social emotional. And this one really is only present if you have Zoom. So not everyone has access to Zoom. Not all children are able to do the video conferences, but this is important if you are able to do that. The discussion board element. Here is a place where students interact with each other and the teacher interacts with individual students. For online courses, this can be sometimes the only way that you add that interactive connection in there. Down here, we have this evaluation piece. So how do all of these elements that you evaluate the students' learning, how do they fit into the course? You might have students doing tests or writing papers. Students do presentations. My students often do lots of essays and they do some PowerPoints. Sometimes we make portfolios, and portfolios are really wonderful ways to get students to learn from each other. So the evaluation piece, again, collaboration. Sometimes the collaboration and the evaluation, as you see, overlap because the evaluation could involve a collaborative assignment. And then another piece here is the reflection. So the journal or the blog piece. And I want to just point out something. If you look at this collection of circles, what you really see is everything here is also in a face-to-face classroom, except what? Except the fact that it's delivered through an LMS, that it's delivered using technology. So I want to point out that good teaching online and face-to-face really is having many similar elements. We'll talk about those. So here is this multimodal model for education. And this is the one that I wanted to get to. And the idea here is that all of these things are present, but that the center is that the course becomes a learning community. And this means that this interactive element where the students are interacting and the teacher is present, that this is really an integral part of what happens online. And in the absence of that, it's almost like something from the 50s and 60s, from the olden days that we used to call correspondence courses. In those days, students could work alone, independent study with a packet, and they would be mailed a packet. They would finish their packet and they would mail it back. So that was learning devoid of all of the community elements, interaction. And here, we don't want our online education to be grounded in this kind of correspondence course model, that ultimately at the center of it all, there is an overlap of learning from each other, with each other, as much as we can, even in an online mode. So one thing I want to point out from this one, as I'll move to the next one, is it really does address cognitivist, social, constructivist, the different learning theories, because it really pulls in a lot of those essential pieces. Like I said a little bit earlier, the learning models that we use as educators and the online learning models, they mesh, they pull together. And this model in particular, it shows that collaborative, that joining of the two. So ultimately here, this learning community in this online world is grounded in the idea that the students are working on their own, but there is an element of interaction. And that interaction is with each other as they post and respond. It's with the teacher, and it's with the material as well. So now I stop and I want to ask if there are some aspects about the online learning models and this idea of learning online alone, but not alone, that you find particularly interesting, or of course, if you have questions. And here I put some pictures. We didn't go over these. These were just pictures I wanted to show because we went over a few of these models, these foundational principles, but there are many approaches. And I really shared with you what I find to be central for me as an online teacher that doesn't want my students to just sit alone and feel like they're not having interaction with me or interaction with each other. So I will stop and see if anybody has any responses, anything they want to share or questions.
Yeah, so thanks, Annalise. So there have been some questions and comments on Zoom as well as YouTube about games, because a lot of kids are sort of used to, like some kids play online games, and and some people are not used to the fact that by going online, it's also sort of a way to learn, that it's not just fun, even though you're also trying to make it fun. So we're hoping you can sort of talk a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm. So the question really gets to the heart of the matter, particularly with the young humans. My 9-year-old, when she earns privileges, the first thing she wants is she wants my phone. She wants to play Roblox. She has a specific game she loves. It's not a learning game, but it's a game. So when she goes into the classroom environment online and there aren't any gamification elements, sometimes she gets kind of distracted. So one thing I wanted to point out here is that as I present to you, I try to model a little bit of what I would do in my classes. So to address this, a student who's been playing games online appreciates, from my experience, having little clips so that it's not just, let's watch the teacher do a talk or lecture. Let's stop and watch a clip. The clip kind of draws them back in. It's kind of an interesting idea. So the clip draws them back in. Sometimes an interactive quiz that can be a little game-like. You can do interactive quizzes on Google Slides that draws them in. So then there is this idea of these visuals. I'm a visual learner. I like to put color and images that I find that teachers can use. And those also help students who are used to that game world, that online YouTube world, to kind of stop and say, oh, let's look at this again. So I try to model how I believe good online teaching and learning occurs. And that is with not just listening to the teacher, not just having text to read, but having interactive activities. Stop and talk, ask a question, show a clip, show something visually interesting, and put students in a room to talk about something, have a little competition. One thing that I want to share on the day when we talk about tools and strategies is one of my favorite activities, one of my daughter's favorite activities. And of course, many of you probably used it for small humans, but the scavenger hunt. So that actually gets the small human away from the computer, running around the house to find the words that you're covering or the topic, something related to the theme that you're covering. It can even just be an icebreaker, find a picture of your pet or find something blue or green. And it's interesting that the same way that we approach a varied interactive classroom that's face-to-face, we really have to look at the computer in the same way. This online world, it cannot just be one thing. Listen to your teacher for 50 minutes or read something, and mark in the margins. It really has to be a variety of things. And I don't know if that answers particularly games, but it does kind of lend itself to a teaser for the future, the next workshop where we will focus more on those tools. Anything else, Dennis?
Yes, and so some of the people on Zoom also mentioned, one person mentioned about short stories. Do you have any thoughts on that? Short stories, the benefits of using short stories?
I absolutely am a believer in stories of all sorts. And I like the idea now on the World Wide Web that we have many ways to deliver them. So again, using my 9-year-old, she's been reading Harry Potter. She has the book, she's listening to the audio. So short stories with audio, short stories with text, and also the read to you, stories with pictures. I find that students respond at every level to that medium. And when teachers read the story to the student, it helps the student connect to the teacher. But there are also many resources, and I'll show you, I have a lovely list of resources that you can use where the stories are read aloud. And those are powerful tools for students to continue learning once the class, the synchronous class time has finished. So I'm very excited about showing you some of those things that I use. Shall we go on? Okay, so some key principles here. These are a little bit more specific, and I feel like these are things that are essential for online teaching, but many of them translate into face-to-face teaching. So just quickly to look at these, how you start the course, how you interact with the student, and how you structure the collaboration, how you make the active learning, giving the feedback, of course, high expectations. For me as a college instructor, the respect for diversity is paramount, but I think that every level needs to learn. Some students are intimidated. And then here, one of the principles that we use in teaching, particularly for the youngers, is the gamification and storytelling. And then of course, engaging and encouraging. So I have for you here a little clip. This is looking exactly at my college class in Canvas. So this is in a learning management system, and I'm highlighting a few of these different key principles and showing you how they're manifested. So let's see if this plays.
Well, I'd like to show you a few of those really important key online teaching principles and practice. So what I'm showing you here is my 5-week online English 101 course that I just completed a few weeks ago this summer. And I want to show you the very first thing that I think is important to pay attention to as a key principle. Actually, two key principles here. So the first one is to start strong. You can see here at the very beginning of the course, I welcome my students to my, this is a course in Canvas. I also have a welcome letter linked here so that they can see a lot of information all in one spot. I give them a nice long welcome message, and then I have a welcome video clip that I make here for them. It's a brief introduction to myself and to the course. Another thing I do right away is I have them send in some words that they are feeling, and I make a Wordle on the second day of class with the words that they have sent in. So here is the Wordle with the words that they were expressing their feelings to me about. You can see one of the most important words here was excited, and the other one, most frequent, was nervous. So my course here is arranged in Canvas around modules, and I have a really clear Start Here module with a check-in assignment that I ask them to do right away. I also have this open discussion forum section, and then my course is organized by weekly modules. When you click on my Start Here module, you can see all of the important information in the module that helps the students really start strong. All sorts of information about instructor contact, information about me, my phone call and email policy, all kinds of things that you really, as a student, benefit from learning right at the very beginning of the class. Another key concept is how to really facilitate that contact with instructors and students. So I actually have a page here that I'll open up and show you that talks about how my students can contact me. In addition, in my Start Here module, I also have ways for students to contact their peers, and I talk about how they need to participate in the class and with each other and use netiquette, which are the rules of politeness for an online class. A few more key principles are really apparent in my Start Here module from the very beginning of my class. If you scroll down here, you can see I have course expectations. I tell the students what I'm expecting from them. Students can click on this course expectation page and get a nice long list of what we are doing. They can see here that we do a lot of discussions and discussion posts, that we do group work online. All of these things are clearly outlined. In addition, I talk about my course participation policy, and I tell the students that they really need to be active participants. They must log in regularly. And also that I promise that I will return their assignments as quickly as possible with lots of comments so that they can learn from what I have noted. In addition to the Start Here module, is the students are also asked to carefully look at the syllabus. Most of the syllabus for this course is also in the actual Canvas, but one important thing I like to point out is this class policy on civility and how we really emphasize from the very beginning that this class requires students to have tolerance, openness, and respectful behavior, not just with me, but also with each other. As they read through my syllabus, they really get a sense of how I approach the teaching and the learning experiences. A couple more key online learning principles I'd like to show you are this idea that as their teacher, I am far from perfect. So I really emphasize that they might see I make some mistakes and that it's fine for them to speak up and point those out. You can see the perfect cake and then the not so perfect cake. So here, my primary goals really do match many of those online teaching principles. I really want them to get a sense of who I am. I have a long hello section with lots of information about me and my life. I try to give them a sense of all of the different expectations from the course, from them, and how they are to interact with each other. So hopefully from a little peek at the course that I teach here in the United States, you can see some of these key principles for online teaching in action.
Okay, so those principles were listed here, and I wanted to illustrate them with my class. I think it's important to not just say this is a principle, this is a key component, but to show how it works. On the following pages, I have a few more details for each of the principles. And I was noting that we are going a little more slowly than I anticipated. But I did want to point out this idea of the contact between the teacher and the student, and the importance of the chats and the discussions and the emails and the conferences. Those are crucial for any age group. I had a friend who is an elementary school teacher, and I asked her, what is the one thing that this last spring, when she was using Zoom to teach the synchronous classes, that the students liked the most? And she said what they liked the most was one-on-one time where the teacher was conferencing with the students. And I feel like the online world really allows you to do that, maybe even more at times than if you're in a classroom face-to-face where everyone wants your attention. So here, this one is, how do you set up everything? And we have to look at this idea that it's intentionally set up so that we foster communication and we foster the environment for the students to feel comfortable and to feel actively engaged. So some of the activities were icebreakers, discussions and chats, a buddy system, which works really well for the younger ones and the older ones. The Q&A, I showed you that in my own class, the group projects, again, things that are really important. If I can keep going, I'm not sure how we are in time, but this collaboration and communication and cooperation in an online world. So we have to look at ways to create projects. And so interactive web pages, study groups, real life situations, all of these things are key to maintain a very interactive and communicative language learning environment. Oh, and problem-based activities. A couple more here that I was highlighting for diversity, and the idea someone mentioned already about how important storytelling is. And really, a lot of times students do well if they use stories from their own lives, which connects into this respect for diversity, because our students have very different lives from one another, and they have to learn to respect each other's experiences as the personal lives are incorporated. So using the storytelling here is a principle that I find is universal, face-to-face, online, teaching reading, teaching writing, teaching listening, teaching speaking. A couple more before we're getting to the end, the idea of engaging and encouraging. And again, this mirrors face-to-face, but you can, as an online educator, still be involved. You can pause and listen, make sure you're taking everyone with you, make sure that no one feels isolated. I think, again, the key to that is the listening, because you're listening to your students' voices. So if you're doing what I'm doing today, where you're just hearing the teacher, you're not really listening to their voices. So building a course that's interactive and having them give the same kind of feedback that they would give in the classroom using different means is really important. So I have from Frank Avila a clip that I'm not going to show you, but I will put it in here that you can watch. And I wanted to show you the important aspects here he talks about for remote or online learning. And I think that this is a fun way to present it. It kind of reviews the things I've said, but I think it's in a more maybe visually friendly way. So the behavior class expectations, being available, the group work, the fun, there comes the gamification, the cognitive rigor that we really do expect learning to occur. That's telling me my time is coming to the end. Different content types. And here he suggests no lectures, but as a college instructor, I put short lectures. Ongoing feedback, we're going to talk about that feedback and assessment on the last day. The relationships that are fostered, the engaging activities, showing your personality. I hope you got a little sense today of how I am as a teacher and how I feel like you have to let your personality show, and that helps you connect to the students. Certainly the online conferences all of the things that are clearly written with the different means to assess and how to teach your students to study well and be successful, the discussions, certainly the autonomy, helping students learn to get their work done on their own. And then of course, that last tech issue, which can be a great advantage, and sometimes it can be also a big hurdle. So I'm glad today that we didn't have a tech problem where something died on my computer or somewhere along the process of Zoom or of YouTube, because that can be an issue. So my last question for you here, and again, you can respond on Edmodo or we can talk together. Which of these principles you find useful, and are there any things that are new? Maybe how they're integrated in the online environment is new. So that's what I'd like to talk about as we have a few minutes to talk together. I do want to show one more clip, and I'm going to try to push this through because I know that the first hour is done and we're really moving on to talking. But this was an uplifting idea. These are high school students talking about distance learning. Oh, my clip. There we go.
When I was told that we were doing online school, I was kind of skeptical.
I knew it was going to be something weird because it's something, we haven't really done before.
I was kind of upset at not going to school anymore. I was going to miss all my friends, but online classes aren't that bad.
I thought it was going to be a big struggle, but a lot of people are working together.
In the beginning, I was like, well, how's that going to work? But it is going really, really well.
It's a lot better than I thought it was going to be.
I'm very impressed with how quickly they're able to do everything.
We're still learning at the same level we were before, which is pretty surprising.
I'm having to create my own schedule and be responsible to finish all my assignments.
They will give us like multiple assignments, but it won't be due until like Friday, and they'll give it to us Monday, you see. So we have time to do it.
Teachers have been like really active and really good at communicating with us.
Always there to help, always there to answer questions.
Most of the teachers, especially if they see like, oh, a lot of students struggled with this assignment, so that night they'll be like, hey, I'll have a Zoom meeting tomorrow morning, and they'll open up.
One of my instructors for JROTC always makes videos and says, I hope everyone's well. If you need anything at all, reach out to anybody. We're always out here to help you.
I think that my teachers have been putting forth a really good effort to try and help us see it out.
I have a shirt that I got made for me. It's Senior 2020 Quarantine.
As much as teens don't always like school, we definitely need it. So I feel like this is better than not being in school at all.
It's definitely going to be helpful. I don't think I could miss this instruction. I'd be so far behind.
I'm glad that we were able to continue school online, and I think it was a great idea.
I just applaud the teachers for being able to change their routine so quickly and still focus on the education of students as their #1 priority.
I just want to say, I appreciate all the teachers for everything they do, and they're heroes.
Thank you for working hard for us. Thank you for being flexible.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for what you're doing, and I appreciate you being there for us. And it's really nice to see that you care.
Okay, so again, we kind of come back to this idea of you could hear what the students are saying, how the teachers have responded. As language teachers, I think we have challenges that I think sometimes content subjects may not have, but ultimately there are a lot of very similar principles that translate between a content instructor and a language instructor. So I was going to see now, going back to my question, key principles, new ideas, and I did have another little quiz question here. What was the muddiest point? I like to do this at the end of class, ask students if they have a question, and they'll send it to me or they'll turn it in on a piece of paper, something that they want to learn more about. And my other questions for you, what do you remember that you will use? Is there anything that you will use right away or that impacted you? Like when I start to plan for the next course I'm doing, what will I do differently? So that kind of connects to the new concept or idea that you want to share.
Yes, Annalise?
Yes.
Hi, Annalise. Hi. So just to summarize some of the questions from both Zoom and YouTube, and on everyone on Zoom or YouTube, feel free to type in your questions to some of the your answers to some of the questions that Annalise poses. Some people were mentioning sort of some of the differences between teaching like younger kids, like elementary school kids, or high school kids, because some teachers here on the chat are finding it hard to engage high school kids because they seem very distracted by the online education. They don't seem like they're responding that well. And whereas some of the younger kids, the like kindergarten or elementary school, their English is not that good yet, so they have a hard time speaking, or they're not as comfortable. So we wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Okay, so it seems like two different things: engaging high school and then the younger ones with the spoken, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
So for the high school, I think of high school students almost like nearly college level, and I think that if teachers treat them as though they're moving forward to college and the work you are doing is preparing them for college, the expectation bar can be set very high. So I think it's really important to convey the expectations at the very beginning and to couple that with that encouragement and that teacher presence. And we're going to talk about that when we talk about online course creation. But for me, the teacher presence and the sense of engagement and caring and commitment that you as a teacher show, I think makes an impact on all students, but particularly on those adolescent students that are moving into adulthood, that this teacher is really caring about my learning. And that's the first thing. The other thing is to really create engaging activities. And those activities in the online world often they're often very different, and they can be extraordinarily exciting when you can use the online resources. So the World Wide Web and the Learning Quest kinds of activities where students are researching problems and solving problems and presenting solutions, I find to be a particularly engaging and successful technique online with older students. When I teach my writing courses, my students each pick their own research topic. So if I have 35 students, I have 35 research topics that matches an area of interest for them. So as they do their reading, their watching of clips, they are gathering information to share based on something that interests them. And certainly for college students, I encourage them to look at their major or to look at their hobbies or to look at issues that they care about. But I find that is one of the most crucial parts to retain their attention, and that is to give them choice in what they're learning and how their learning is applied. So maybe the content, the language requirements are the same across the level, but the way the students are exploring the information and applying their knowledge is more individualized. So I don't know if that one makes sense. For the small humans and the spoken, I think the chat rooms and the individual conferences are really key because it actually gives students more time one-on-one with the instructor than they might have gotten in a class.
Thank you so much. And there's one question from YouTube that we got regarding, are there any apps that you recommend for teaching or for learning that would be good?
Well, that's a very good question to have at this point because it sort of teases the subsequent workshops. There are apps I use in all my classes, but I don't want to tell you all of those because then you won't come back. So yes, there are apps to share. However, I will also preface it by saying, These are apps that I use in my context. There may be apps that you can share with me that you use in your context that I don't know about. And I would encourage you also to share those apps, but I will be sharing, and I'm actually going to show you some clips of how I use things. So more to come. Stay tuned.
And one more question real quick, also from Zoom. There's a question about any thoughts, Annalise, about some of the differences between theme-based learning and content-based instruction? Any thoughts on that?
I have a bias. I really like theme-based. I find that students are more engaged, but sometimes teachers don't have a choice. So sometimes teachers have a set curriculum they have to teach, they have to follow. But I find that from my experience working with teachers in different places, even with set curriculum content that's given, the teacher can find a way to pull in some relevant information from the news or, some human stories about that content. So I like theme because I think it gives me as a teacher more freedom and it gives my students more buy-in. But when it's content-based, I try to simulate some of those benefits that theme-based has in that content-based world. I don't know if that's clear.
Yes, it is. That's very good. And one person from Zoom sort of mentioned, as you discussed, the huge challenge now of online teaching and learning, not only in Panama, but around the world. And what are your thoughts on, the fact that some teachers nowadays have to be actors or actresses or, in order to engage people? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think I might have a little bit of a sort of a notion that all teachers teach because they do like that element of that social presentation, that they do like having the chance to express their ideas with energy. Hopefully, I hope people aren't teaching because they're bored and they just have nothing else to do. So certainly online, the energy that you present, the persona that you have makes a difference. But I would argue that a good teacher with a big heart that has designed, very careful learning experiences, who might be less inclined to be an actor and maybe less effective as an entertainer, can still facilitate very successful learning. And I think that the students buy into the learning process when they see the benefits and the impact, as opposed to maybe only coming because it's entertaining. I think teachers can certainly blend both, but ultimately a great entertainer will not be a good teacher if the content and the structure of the learning that's been designed is not effective and well thought out. But I would say that a well-planned lesson delivered by someone who is perhaps less entertaining can be very effective. Maybe that was a lot of explanation, I don't know.
Oh no, that was very good. Thank you. And as we're wrapping up now, because we're coming to the end of this first workshop, we like to thank everybody once again, everyone on Zoom as well as YouTube for participating in this workshop. Annalise, do you want to share any final thoughts as well as maybe some information about what you will talk about on Wednesday at the same time for 4:30? Please join us.
Yeah, so I wanted to share, I have links to the different places that I've taken information. And then I have my little see you at the next workshop. So this was a fun thing that I did on Google Slides. Sometimes I do these things, they don't take long, but just a way to share some of my personality and some of the things I like to do. Ultimately, I really encourage you to come back because I feel like in in a face-to-face world, we would not have just done 1 hour. We would have gone through at least 3 hours and talked about course design and talked about tools and strategies, because they all really fit together. So I highly encourage you to come back and find those other pieces that go with today, the course design and the tools and strategies this week. And then next week, the parts about motivation and assessment are also really important. So I think that if you do return, you may be feeling like, I want to learn more, I want to know more, and there were some pieces that I wanted more from, more about today, but I encourage you to come back because those are coming. So that's, I think, my message and my funny little cartoon at the end. So Dennis, do you want to close it up?
Yes,
or?
it's very good. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. So once again, we're going to finish our session now. So thank you, everyone, for participating. And please join us on Wednesday, everyone. Wednesday, we're going to, Annalise will also be here again to deliver our second workshop on Wednesday. And what was the topic again, Annalise, for Wednesday? Let me...
You're a little frozen. Did you ask me to...
Oh, yes, yes. Yes. Oh, Annalise, sorry. So yes. So for everyone's awareness, what was the topic again for Wednesday?
So Wednesday, we're looking at online tools and learning strategies. So I think there's a lot of takeaways for Wednesday.
Okay, very good. So thank you so much, Annalise. And thank you once again, everyone on Zoom and YouTube. And we will see you on Wednesday. And also don't forget to join us on Edmodo. Edmodo tomorrow. Annalise will be there for a little bit to answer and comment on some of your questions that you might have that we didn't have the chance to address. And we're sorry we didn't have a chance to address everyone's question, but we will do our best next time as well. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming. Goodbye.